Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Road, the transportation industry podcast where we talk all things transportation and logistics. Joining me today is Josh Rivers. Josh is a sales team manager with ATS Logistics and has been on the podcast many times, and typically offering monthly updates for us so that we know what's going on in the transportation marketplace during each month of the year. So
we're coming up on 2 years worth of updates, aren't we?
Yep. You definitely did this last October.
Yeah. Okay, so this has got to be episode 24 that involves me.
For sure.
I do know that you involved Eric Mezzo on an episode. I'm going to be honest, I was hurt.
That might have been one of the few that you weren't on.
It stung. I was like, wow, that's my job, but
yeah,
here we are.
Yep, we've been sticking with you because,
because I'm better at it, let's be honest.
Once you find a good fit, yeah, you're better at it. You know what's going on.
I hope Eric listens to this.
With transportation. He won't.
I'm going to send it to him directly.
You can send it to him. As
soon as I get back to work.
October. We're coming up on retail season.
Spooky season.
Coming up on Halloween. We're coming up on the changing of weather in the northern United States.
Yes.
What happens in trucking?
So, once again, I consulted a couple of our operations managers, mainly because you would think I've been doing this for 5 years. I should have at least a little bit of a grasp on what happens. And for the most part, I do. But this year seems to be a return to normalcy. And for the past couple of years, I've been checking in with them to get a gauge on what's going on. And I just wanted to verify that we're still seeing what we should be seeing going into October. So the big things going into October is the Midwest, more or less, is going to come to a really, really steep cool down. The construction materials that are going to be moving around in the Midwest won't be moving around anymore. It's going to be a lot cooler, which is going to be great. This is like that time of year for us where it's perfect.
The perfect temperature. It's like crisp outside and sunny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right now we're in that weird medium where it's sweatshirts in the morning and then you really regret wearing a sweatshirt by the time the afternoon rolls around. So it's horrible.
Like 84 today.
Yeah, exactly.
I walked out of my apartment, it was 45 or something.
That's horrible. You're just sweating like crazy at your desk. But no, I'll start with dry vans, and I've got an update here in front of me. I had to take a picture of the message. I sent it through our office chat app instead of writing it down, and then by the time it was time for me to come over here, I was like, I have no way to bring this with me. So right now, for the dry van side of things, so I mentioned before that the Midwest cools off, and that's more so in relation to flatbed freight. For dry van freight, the Midwest actually heats up because we're looking at harvest season, and the same thing goes for the Northwest as well. So Idaho, Washington, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, sugar, potatoes, those fun things are going to be moving with a relative high volume. So that's going to make these areas desirable markets for these kind of carriers, for dry van carriers. And that goes throughout the fourth quarter, pretty much until the snow hits the ground. Reefer freight capacity is still really tight, and we anticipate it to stay tight through October, and the rates will follow accordingly. You're going to pay a premium for reefer trailers right now. It's just the way it is. And any freight that heads into the southeast, so Florida, southern Georgia, what other examples did they give us here? Anything that's going inbound, Texas, Florida, and southern Georgia, you're going to pay a premium for. And that's if you can find people that are even willing to go there. So I can speak.
Why is that? It's just from the weather?
There's no freight.
Oh.
There's no freight. The weather does play a factor into it. Yes, it's hurricane season, and yes, that absolutely plays into drivers taking freight down there.
There's
But pretend
no outbound freight.
Right. Pretend no hurricane makes landfall this year. You would still have the same problem with Florida. Is drivers just do not want to go down there because the rates coming out aren't good. You'll find guys basically saying, just pay for most of my gas, and I'll take this load coming out of Florida because it's all they have. So it's tough, but plan accordingly. And if you're a shipper out of southern Florida, this is great news for you because your rates are going to be at an all-time low, and you're going to have carriers clamoring to get onto that freight.
Right.
So if you ship into Florida, not as much good news. And we've noticed recently with a couple of customers we've been working with is it's sometimes it's not even a rating question. It's just drivers won't go. Where you can ask them, how much for you to take this load to Miami? They're like, I don't want it. No, but how much? How much to take it? I don't want it. Whatever you want. Name your price. I'm not taking it. I don't want it. And it's to the point where I just don't want to deal with it.
Is it just because it's like Miami, for example, is just tourism-based economy, and there's like just no manufacturing or fabrication?
More or less. I mean, you think about the industries that really thrive in Florida as a whole, and it's like you said, it's mostly tourism-driven, and it's mostly entertainment-driven. Yeah. So, I mean, Florida has things that it produces, but it's mostly produce. Yeah. And that season is done and over with. And there's some construction that goes on there, but, there's not a whole lot of freight for you coming out, right? So you can find stuff well enough to go into Florida. It's just getting out is going to be a problem.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, from a dry van side of things, that's kind of the gist of it. Northwest is going to be picking up, like I mentioned, with potatoes and other freight, mainly retail freight. So what that means is outbound freight from those areas is going to be the opposite of Florida, right? So outbound freight from the Northwest and from the Midwest right now is going to be more expensive, specifically because of the demand that is in those areas. Mm-hmm. And again, this is mainly specifically speaking to dry van side of things. Texas, for some strange reason, I've always wondered this, and I still don't know if I have an answer. I've always kind of offhandedly wondered it since I started at this company, but I've noticed that Texas in the wintertime cools down. In the fall and wintertime, the Texas market cools down. And getting out of Texas is not that hard at all for a lot of carriers. You can find drivers coming out of Texas, no problem, and they'll do it for a relatively fair rate depending on where it's going. But in my mind, I always thought I was like summer or fall and winter, I would want to be in Texas if I was a truck driver. It's warmer, there's a lot of industry there, there's a lot of manufacturing there, and for whatever reason, it's not the case. I've asked this question 2 or 3 times, and it's been answered all 3 times, and I never remember why. So I'll have to bother Sean again.
Write it down next time.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you told me this 3 or 4 times. But if you can make it 4 or 5, I'll remember it this time.
But it's just reliably year after year it cools down. Even
during COVID years, we noticed it was just Texas just got easier in the fall and winter time. Just easier to get guys out of Texas.
Interesting.
A little bit more. Sometimes it's difficult to get guys into Texas. Sometimes it's not hard at all to get guys into Texas. But I don't know. So that's the dry van side of things and the reefer side of things. For the flatbed side of things, it's actually kind of interesting. Something you wouldn't think about. So like we said, the Midwest is going to heat up, right? And the Northwest is going to heat up, right, for those harvest seasons and getting all the sugar and the potatoes out. What that means from a flatbed standpoint is because a lot of the construction in the Midwest and a lot of the open deck freight in the Midwest is going to start to dry up, carriers are going to switch trailer types. So a guy who's been hauling flatbed all summer might go, well, I don't want to miss out on this harvest freight. Yeah. So he's going to park that flatbed, switch over to a dry van, and head up there and move some harvest freight and be paid very handsomely for doing so. And what this means is it's going to affect the capacity available for flatbed trailers and for open deck trailers in general. So that's something you can expect from the open deck side of things. Is I imagine that our capacity for open deck freight is going to tighten up a little bit, particularly going into bad areas. And just like dry van freight, if the Southeast is not appealing to open deck drivers right now, nobody wants to go to Florida. Nobody wants to go to Southern Georgia. One thing that you're going to start noticing is the inklings of it are going to start to show their face now once we hit October. Is areas that are cold are going to become a lot less appealing to truck drivers, to open deck drivers, I should say. A dry van carrier doesn't get out of his truck. He backs up to a door. Doesn't matter if it's 20 below outside, 100 degrees outside. He's not getting out of the truck, so it doesn't really bother him. Minus the wear and tear on the equipment, but you get what I'm saying. Where an open deck driver who has to tarp, who has to strap, who has to, a million different things, it's going to be a lot more unappealing to them because, put yourself in an open deck carrier's shoes. Do you really want to get out and pull a tarp off a load at 7 a.m. in the morning when it's 22 degrees outside? Yeah. Doesn't sound like a good time. And that only gets worse as the year goes on. And we'll touch base again on that in the November update, in the December update, and all of that. So,
sure. Have you seen any, are you still battling the price stuff on your side as far as, I know the dry van market was kind of soft for a while.
It was, and we're not chasing as much as we were, and rates are more or less doing what we anticipate them to do. So the areas that I said are going to be hot, it's going to be hard getting guys out of there. The areas that are soft, it's going to be easy getting guys out of there, and vice versa. Yeah. So it's not so much a secret or a gamble or a dart throw in a dark room like it was, right. But we're still on our toes, right? I think that's what COVID taught everybody. The pandemic taught everybody is that you constantly have to be on your toes. The second we become complacent, something else throws a wrench in the works, and then you're chasing prices again. Up, down, either way, it's never a good thing.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that the idea, what every broker should be attempting, what every provider in general should be attempting to do is to be a bobber on a lake. And as the tide comes up, the bobber goes up, and as the tide goes out, the bobber comes down. So you're not chasing rates. So if you miss an upswing in a rate, you could be in this awkward position where you're either going to lose money for your company, or you're going to have to go back to your customer and have a really awkward conversation and say things like, oh, I missed the price increase on this one. I'm going to have to ask for some more money. And nobody wants to do that.
Right.
And on the opposite end of that, if you miss the drop, you could be put in a position where you're gouging your customer. And, some people are going to say, like, oh, you don't really care about that. It's making you more money. And in a way, I do. Because, I might make a ton of money in the short term, but the objective is to build a long-standing relationship with the customer. And you don't do that by gouging somebody, right? I want to give you a price that's pricing to execute is what we call it. I'm going to give you a fair rate that's going to get the job done, that's going to make my company money. I don't need to make $1 million off of you in 10 loads. I would rather make $1 million off of you over the years.
Yeah.
Because I provide a good service at a reasonable rate. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So, being the bobber.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for.
Is October kind of the kickoff of retail's peak?
Yep. This is when you're going to see store shelves are going to start getting loaded up, right?
Yeah.
Because Christmas shopping is going to start in October. November, it's going to really ramp up, and then the last second guys in December. That's me. That's always me. Every December, I'm that guy 2 days before Christmas. Hey, I got to run to Target. I'll be right back. And that's when I knock out all my shopping. So
you get good gifts for people. Very thoughtful gift.
You really do.
Yeah.
Because by that point, I've gotten a couple of Christmas cards in the mail, and those often have Target gift cards, and I'm like, sweet, Christmas shopping. And then I go out and spend those gift cards on other people, so it's the thought that counts, right? So
yeah.
Just padding my bank account stats.
Yep. Are we seeing any more reverberations after the hurricanes that we've been having?
They've
been coming hot and heavy for a while now.
Yeah, it's not a ton. It's just nobody wants to go to Florida.
Oof.
With the hurricane, without the hurricane, nobody wants to go to Florida. We didn't even really hear that as much of a pushback because we had some freight that was moving during that time frame. And nobody said, like, hey, man, there's a hurricane going on. It was no, it's going to Florida.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they knew that there was a hurricane that was rolling through. No, I don't want to go to Florida. Nobody said, hey, there's a hurricane coming through there. Can I grab it tomorrow, the next day?
Yeah.
Or can it deliver this day? Nope. Let's go to Florida. I'd rather not go.
Interesting.
I almost forgot that there was a hurricane, to be honest with you. I mean, nobody pushes back on you with that excuse, and you're like, what is it? And then we have the Weather Channel on in the office, and you look up and you just see this blob moving towards the coast. You're like, oh, that's right. That's happening today, isn't it?
That's wild. Anything else about October, Josh?
Anything?
I suppose we could talk about how, as the days shorten, you can't move oversized loads.
Overdimensional freight. That's actually a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. So there are restrictions in place in certain states, and always please make sure to check your local guidelines and the restrictions that are in place on the route that you're taking. Yeah. But a lot of states have restrictions on overdimensional travel during daylight hours, and as the days shorten, so does your drive time. So in the summertime, it's not a big deal. You can drive from 6 a.m. until 10 o'clock at night.
Yep.
In some instances, and that's about to change drastically, where you'll be traveling from 8:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you get. So that's really, really going to limit your overdimensional capacity, and it's starting right now. I mean, when is the longest day of the year? June
21st.
June 21st. So it's technically been starting for a few months now, but you're really going to see the effects of it here very shortly, if not already. I notice it. I always notice it every year about September time when you step outside of the patio and it's just a little bit chillier than it should be. And you're like, man, wasn't it sunny out at this time last night? And it's like almost sunset. And you're like, what's going on?
Yeah. And then in the Midwest, we get the whole go to work when the sun's down, come home from work when the sun's down.
Yeah, it is horrible. It's devastating for the
people that listen to this podcast are probably like, God, they hate where they live.
I don't hate where I live. No, there's a lot of good stuff. Come on now, we got good stuff.
Yeah,
there's good things about living here. When the winter hits, it's just hard to remember them. Because everything is awful in the winter time.
For 7 months at a time, yeah.
And a lot of people have sports teams to pull them through the wintertime. Like, if you live in areas where you got a good football team or a good hockey team or a good whatever team, like, the wintertime's not that bad.
Sure.
We're not so fortunate.
Look forward to.
We don't get that kind of luxury.
Nope.
Like, what do you guys do in the wintertime? You want to watch the Vikings? Why? Like, it's going to end the same way every year. It ends the same way every year.
I'd say that. Not this year.
Well, we had a really good regular season, and the trophy case stays the same. You can go 16-0, 17-0 now.
Don't even need a trophy case.
Yeah, I'm so jaded at this point as a sports fan. Like, the people who listen to this podcast are going to hear me just get progressively, like, just lower and lower and lower. And it's every season of the Vikings. Whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, it's hard.
One of our social media guys, I was actually over watching the game with him and his brother. And it's to the point where I notice I just laugh. And I'm just like, of course they would. Like, I'm rooting for the other team at that point because I have a 30-minute drive to get back to my house. I'm like, just score so I can go home.
Well, yeah. Well, so we're recording this 6 days after we did the four fumbles in a game.
Yes, that's right. If you're listening, this was recorded after the
Thursday night game.
Vikings-Eagles game, 4 fumbles. We were only spared the 5th because there was a penalty. We almost had 5 fumbles in a game. 5 lost fumbles in a game.
How weird is that? This is not the topic of this podcast, but how weird is that rule where you fumble it out of the end zone and it goes to the other team? I think that's lame.
I don't like the rule. Like, it was called correctly. That's absolutely what should have happened. But I think that needs to be changed. Like, you could run 99 yards, and then if somebody punches it out of your arms in the end zone, like, as you get to the end zone, it's a touchback. Come on now. Like, why don't we maybe bring the ball back to the spot of the fumble? Or, like, if you fumble it out of the end zone, you get the ball on the 25 or something like that.
Yeah,
just,
that's wild.
It just seems outlandish to me.
It doesn't happen that often.
It doesn't. And I don't blame Jefferson. Again, this is not the topic of the podcast, and I'll breeze past this, but I don't blame him for trying to make a play. He was trying to reach over the goal line, lost control of the ball. Hey, man, it happens.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get mad at my receiver who's on pace for 2,600 yards in a season,
Yeah, he's an animal. Okay. Well, I think that's it. You have any tips for shippers in October?
Tips for shippers in October. Be mindful of the produce season. Not the produce season, but the harvest season.
Yeah.
Be mindful of sending your freight to the southeast. Plan ahead. Plan accordingly. Particularly when it comes to over-dimensional freight. You're going to want to make sure that you allot yourself enough time on the given route, given the daylight that you have. Open deck carrier or open deck shippers, do not be surprised if you see a little bit of a capacity crunch. Not a ton, but just be prepared. We are seeing rates still go down, and we're anticipating rates. That's how we're pricing. We're pricing as assuming rates are going down for our contract freight into the fourth quarter. So don't be surprised if you see rates go down, but capacity get a little bit tighter. It is possible for those two things to happen at the same time. It's just not very common.
Yeah, and they are kind of projecting maybe a slower retail peak this year.
Yeah, I think the R word, the recession word, is being thrown around a lot. And I think that makes people more skeptical of spending their money. They want to hang on to more of it. Not me. I'll spend myself into poverty. I have no problem doing that. I've just reckless spending habits. But most people who are smarter than I will be more intelligent with their money.
Okay. Well, thanks, Josh. Thanks for coming on, giving us the insights this month.
I gotta liven it up.
We'll see you next month.
I gotta keep it light. I gotta keep it funny. I want people to be entertained while they're being informed. I don't want this just to be some.
That's why we keep having you back.
See, this is why I'm better than you, Eric, and this is why I'm better, right? So we'll just roll with that. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back. We've guaranteed it. I'll be back.
Thanks.